My ministry's growing, excommunication, I'm still glowing. M-div, shouts for flowing, where you think the church is going? Hey, I was baptized, and this is crazy, but God just called me, so I dated a lady.
I mean, that's just enough of creepiness. You have a very somewhat angry woman, seemingly angry, who just wants to prove that she can function as a priest. And while she can certainly function as a priest and do all the things that a priest does, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the in persona Christi, who Christ calls. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, I'm going to do a little reflection for you because today, June 5th, 2024, I am celebrating my 25th anniversary to the priesthood. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the priesthood has meant to me, the unique encounters that I've had, and in my commentary, I'm even going to spill the tea. I'm going to actually tell you the priests that I admire and the priests I do not admire. So you definitely want to stick around for that. But before we jump right into it, I'd like to simply say thank you to all of those who subscribe and support us on our Patreon community. If you haven't done so yet, please, just click subscribe, hit the like button, share it, and leave your comments. And then also consider joining us on our Patreon community, because that's the only way, with your help, we can continue to produce shows that are not only informational, but formational. I don't want to give you a show that's just going to divide you or make you angry, but I want to give you something that's going to help you to live your Catholic faith in this crazy world. So please support us on our Patreon community. But right now, let's just jump right into it with my comments about faith and the priesthood. Priesthood is certainly a mystery to many people in the world, as it is a mystery to the people in the Catholic Church. Honestly, if you were to think about priesthood, you probably think of old man, maybe either liberal, conservative. You might think of a nice guy. I don't know. I mean, I just want you to ask yourself what you think of when you hear the word Catholic priesthood, because for some, they actually think child abuser. And that's really a frustrating thing for me to experience. When I was younger, I didn't think much about the priesthood. In fact, there were only a couple priests who I kind of liked. The others were just really super boring. I did have some priests in my family life, but many of them actually left the priesthood. There was a guy named Uncle Jack who left the priesthood. And then there was another priest who was my grandfather's brother. And he kind of left the priesthood, kind of didn't, kind of iffy things, you know? And so, like, I think priesthood, when I was younger, didn't make any sense to me. I kind of considered them kind of boring people. But then it wasn't until I actually went on a retreat, so to speak. It wasn't a retreat, it was actually a parish mission. And it was a new priest. He was very energetic, he was very interesting, and he actually talked about the Mass. And it was there that he described what was happening at the liturgy. And at the point of the elevation, when he lifted up the host, I experienced a profound presence of God. That's the only way I can describe it. And it kind of blew me away, pushed me back into my pew. And I remember thinking, maybe there's more to the church than I think. And that was about 18, 19 years old. And then fast forward a couple years later, I actually went on a pilgrimage that my brother paid for to Medjugorje in what was known as Yugoslavia, but now it's Bosnia-Herzegovina, where the Croatians really occupy this village, and they have had alleged apparitions of the Blessed Mother on a daily basis from 6 children for many years, in like 1980s, really. And it was quite inspiring to me, and to see the church universal. And that's kind of where I started to see the priesthood in a bigger way. And so that's what faith requires. You can't look at the priest through the eyes of the person, because to be honest with you, we're all going to disappoint you. Some of us are going to be too liberal. Some of us are going to be too conservative. Some of us are going to be too energetic. Some of us are going to be just too boring. No one is going to fit the perfect priesthood, which is why our faith tells us it's not about me as a person, but it's about me as the person God calls me to be. And that basically means that I am supposed to exist now in persona Christi. The ordination changes me from within in my very substance, so I am no longer just Leo Paddlinghug. I am Father Leo Paddlinghug. And when I perform and celebrate the sacraments, then I am actually acting in the person of Christ, who, by the way, has a gender, which is one reason why it is an all-male priesthood. And I know there are going to be some Catholics even who say, well, that's just silly. And they're going to generally be the more liberal Catholics or the Catholics who just don't care. I mean, I'm not trying to label anybody. I'm just trying to give context that there are going to be some people who just really want a female priesthood. I mean, how many creepy videos are there, including this one?
I had a dream as a girl, like Therese of Lisieux. I need to give this a whirl so I can lead the way. Woman priest is my call, women preaching for all. Don't listen to St. Paul, 'cause I can lead the way. My ministry's growing, excommunication, I'm still glowing. M-div, shazpa flowing, where you think the church is going? Hey, I was baptized, and this is crazy, but God just called me.
Okay, I mean, that's just enough of creepiness, just honestly pure creepiness. And it's in this, you mean just the first few lines. She read Therese of Lisieux, and Therese of Lisieux said that she wanted to be a priest, she wanted to be a missionary, she wanted to be this, that, and the other. But she said that her ultimate vocation was just to love, and to love Jesus, and to love Jesus in his people. And Jesus, if we were to look at his love, it didn't matter if a person was a priest or a poor person. They had to live a call of holiness, and holiness requires obedience. And obedience to who? Obviously God the Father, and to the church that he established. So this is important. So oftentimes in cases like this, you have a very somewhat angry woman, seemingly angry, who just wants to prove that she can function as a priest. And while she can certainly function as a priest and do all the things that a priest does, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the in persona Christi who Christ calls. Now, did God call this woman to serve? Yes, because God calls all people to serve. That's just the reality. But does God call someone, a man, to be a mother? No. Does God call a woman to be a father? No. And I know people be like, well, that's just silly. Well, it might be silly, but it's just biology. And biology was made by theology. And theology means that our biology actually has an ontology. And that's key. The priesthood is not about function. It's about an ontological call, and our call to exist in Christ according to him as set forth by the church. So the church cannot be excluded, including all the rules. And you see a woman here just making up the rules as she wants. She doesn't even want to listen to St. Paul. Come on. Fine, you can have an MDiv. That doesn't make you a priest. I know a lot of women who have MDivs, and they serve the church in beautiful ways. So the priesthood is not about what we do, it's about who we are. And so as I reflect on this, I look at this after 25 years and think, this is a video that is making a mockery of my priesthood, or trying to exalt her priesthood. And we know that there's a difference between the baptized priesthood and the ministerial priesthood. I mean, even Pope Francis talks about the difference there. Oh gosh, in a recent 60-minute interview, he even talked about how women will never be ordained a deacon. They will never be ordained a priest in a sacramental way. They are called to serve, i.e. deacon. They are called to make things holy, i.e. the function of the priesthood. But they are not called to be ontologically united to Christ as a priest, because Christ calls men to follow him ontologically, in their biology, because remember, biology was created by theology, and according to God, there is a difference between man and woman. They both are equal in dignity. They can both do what the other does in some respects. Like, I can't give birth to a baby, but I can help feed a child with a spoon. But you can see a woman feeds a child differently than the way I would. So I think what we have to do is, and as I'm now a priest 25 years, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to God for the call of an all-male priesthood. And why? Because I just know that we do things differently. I didn't say better. In fact, there are some things women can do better. But being a priest is not their calling. I know this is going to generate a lot of hate. That's fine, because there have been people who have fought against the church in many ways and for many reasons, and we just call them Protestants. So yeah, after 25 years, I've realized that there are a lot of Catholics who are actually Protestant. Sad to say. And I can tell you that there are a lot of Protestants who I've met who are very Catholic, with the exception of not receiving or participating in the sacramental life of the church. And so now what I want to do is jump into a cultural commentary about what the culture in the priesthood is all about, and the culture that I experienced in my seminary formation. When I was young, I was really young. I'm going to just kind of, yeah, we're going to look at some pictures of me. My gosh, I'm like, I don't know, like half my size now. Although I'm not like super big, but I'm much smaller here. I think I weighed 125 pounds. Now I weigh like 150 pounds or something like that. And then this is a picture of me in my seminary room. Yeah, I was definitely very, very young. But that's okay, because God calls young people. And culturally speaking, we have to remember that the priesthood's vocation doesn't begin when you're older. It actually begins when you're younger. Parents, I'm going to recommend that you talk to your children about a vocation to religious life. For men, for the priesthood; for women, for religious life as a consecrated nun, a consecrated sister. It's okay. My mom and dad actually never talked to me about it, but there were people in my life who were priests. And again, I had two uncles who have, in a sense, left the priesthood. And so I wonder, am I going to do the same? No, I don't think so, because I'm incredibly happy. Doesn't mean that every day is perfect. And so after that, I was called to seminary life. And I got to tell you, in seminary life, things really began to click for me. Because as you can see in these pictures, it's just me hanging out with just a bunch of my brothers, having a good time, either traveling to Egypt, and you see pictures of me singing with a music group for Christmas, and we were all asked to wear crazy hats. This is a picture at the beach, and then one other picture of me with just my friends the day before I left for Rome, because I started seminary in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic University of America Theological College, and then I was asked to go to Rome, and that's where I spent most of my priesthood. And if there's anything that I recall there, is that I had an amazing time. And the people that I met there are still my brothers in Christ, my friends, and some of my closest confidants. And they shaped my priesthood by their example. And sometimes it was not good example. Most of the times it was great example. Like, I remember guys waking up and going to the chapel super early in the morning. I would wake up at about 5 and I'd be at the chapel by 5:30. And there was a small handful of us that would go to chapel earlier to this smaller chapel. And it was kind of a competition, it was a joke after a while. Like, if I was late 5 minutes, they would tell me, "You're late." And so it was just kind of those crazy moments where you see that priesthood is not just a bunch of old men. It actually began when you were younger, and it required us to be formed in a sense. And after seminary, but it was in seminary that I really had a passion for cooking. I had cooked even before seminary. I worked at a pizza stand, I worked at a hot dog factory, and I did a lot of serving at my family functions, because we had a lot of parties growing up as a kid. So I did a lot of cooking and a lot of serving. But then in seminary, I actually started to pay attention to a theology of food. There's actually a couple episodes about it, early on, so you might want to just scroll through those episodes. But it was there in Italy, that I kind of developed a real love for the discipline of cooking. Discipline meaning the discipleship of cooking and the discipleship of food, and the whole understanding of focusing on the Eucharist, which is food. Boom, kind of blew my mind and helped me to realize that food is an incredible part of faith. And so after cooking and learning about the priesthood, I was finally ordained, originally for the Archdiocese of Baltimore, on June 5th, 1999. Of these classmates now, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. I think there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 remaining. 5 remaining. I can't remember, to be honest with you. So it's interesting, but as I just kind of got ordained for the Archdiocese of Baltimore, it was a real pleasure to work in parish life for almost 10 years. And then I was sent to the seminary. I was the director of pastoral formation. And it was in seminary that I started to explore new ecclesial movements. In fact, it was prior to seminary that I was introduced to Voluntas Dei, the community in which I am now a part. So after 10, 12 years, I started to seriously investigate if God was calling me to consecrated life and to work in a specific mission of the church. And as a result, I am now a member of a consecrated life community, a secular institute of pontifical right. I know that these are very big words. These are just categories of types of priests. And as a secular institute, it's my job to enter into the secular world. As a consecrated secular institute priest, my job is to help consecrate the secular world. Since Voluntas Dei is a community of clergy, we are also known as missionaries, which means I am sent for a specific mission. All of which to say, yes, I'm a legit priest. Don't freak out. All right. I still live in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, where I was ordained, but my mission and ministry is now different. But I'm still close to my classmates. And as I look at some of these photos, some of my classmates are now bishops. One is in the auxiliary bishop of Baltimore. One is the bishop of St. Augustine. I've got another classmate. I don't have a picture of him. He's like, oh no, I can find a picture of him. Yeah, there it is. He's a very tall bishop. He's the bishop in Tampa, St. Pete. And I have also another friend who's a bishop in Carie in Indiana. So I've got some friends doing some pretty amazing things. And I'm just sauteing onions. No, I know that God has a specific mission for me. But that's the culture of the priesthood. You can't limit the culture of the priesthood to just one thing. If you think that priests are only in the parish, well, then what about the priests who have to teach? And then what about the priests who have to work in prison systems? And what about the priests who work in serving the poor? And the priests who are in hospitals? I think one of the big struggles with the priesthood culture is that we are just stretched. We're just doing way, way, way too much. And that can lead to burnout. And that can lead to cranky priests. And that doesn't mean that priest isn't holy, it just means he's having a bad day. And the culture, unfortunately, is so incredibly unforgiving. Like us priests, we have to forgive you of your sins, no matter what sins they are. But it's funny because the people that we forgive actually aren't willing to forgive us. Now, I know that some priests have done horrific things. Terrible, evil, sinful, albeit even illegal. And for that reason, they need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. They must do the penance required for what humans have established to be just punishment. But can you at least forgive him? He can do the penance, but can you at least forgive him? This is a culture that rejects the priesthood because they can't forgive, even if the priesthood will never reject you and will always forgive you. So it's a very strange thing what I have learned in my 25 years. I've discovered that there are some people who admire the priesthood but don't really understand it, and therefore put you on a pedestal, and they aren't real with you. They aren't authentic with you. There are places where I will go and they don't want me to do anything, and I just sit there and I'm like, dude, I am here to serve, not to be served. And then there are people who couldn't care less about the priesthood. They're like, hey, Leo. And I'm like, it's Father Leo. It's Father Leo. You're a Catholic. Call me Father Leo. Granted, if we get to know each other and we are super casual and we're just kind of hanging out and you call me Leo, no big deal. But for you just to not assume that there is a difference, I mean, it would be no different. Even if I don't like the guy, I don't say, hey, Joe. I say, hello, Mr. President. I don't have to like the guy, and I don't, but I have to respect his office. I do pray for him, especially because he's a Catholic that's not acting like one. I wonder what he would call me. He would call me Father Leo. But would he actually listen to what I have to say, especially about his stance on abortion? That's another thing about the culture, is that the culture thinks that we can't, as priests, talk about politics. But we're not talking about politics. I'm talking about the commandment to not kill. And yet people are going to put priests in a little box. It's like this little box. It's called Sunday for an hour. No. I'm sorry. The priesthood is not to be limited for an hour when you go to church. It is up to us to act in persona Christi. And that means to practice the presence of God way beyond this little bubble that people like to put priests in. It's so funny because I'll be walking down the street and I'll, in my collar, and some people would say, hello, Father. And some people would just give me dirty looks just because they know what I stand for. There's a place in Baltimore that's actually canceled my food truck because they don't like Catholics. In fact, in one of our Yelp complaints, it said, yeah, I like my food with a side of homophobia and I don't even know what it was. It's just, but basically saying because I'm a priest, they won't eat my food because they think that I am anti this or phobic that. The culture is just messed up, which is why I'm so annoyed by some priests, which I'm going to talk about right now as I jump into my comments about my commentary on the priesthood. It's so funny because people think that priests aren't allowed to have an opinion. And I have many opinions. Oftentimes, my opinions are formed by facts and theology and experience. So I don't like to have an opinion, a strong opinion, unless I can back it up and say that it's not really an opinion anymore. It actually is fact. How I feel about it can be an opinion. But that's just the real struggle, is that oftentimes if you have an opinion and people don't like you, they hate the priesthood because of it. Which is why I'm going to tell you, the priests that I admire the most are priests who keep opinions to themselves while being bold in talking about the teachings of the church publicly and everywhere. There are some strong priests and some amazing bishops who kind of don't give their opinions on things. They just give what the church teaches, and they do it with bold proclamation. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but there are some priests who I very much admire. And they're very popular priests on social media as well. Like Father David Michael Moses. He's younger than me by many years, but he's got a great way of talking about the faith in kind of a fun way. I think of Father Rob Gallia, who is a Maltese priest who lives in Australia. And he is amazing in how he promotes the Catholic faith through not only a social media platform, but also through his music ministry. He's got quite the charism. Of course, how can you not call out Father Mike Schmidt, right? I mean, I can say proudly that we are friends. We hang out with each other. And when I hang out with him, I always feel so inferior. I mean, because he's like muscular and he's so, he's a handsome fellow, and he's got a great way of presenting the faith in beautiful, bold ways. And then there are other priests who I'm not going to name simply because it would truly embarrass them, because they might not have a public ministry, but they are priests through and through who lead their parishes with such clarity and dignity. They aren't there to be popular. They're there to teach the faith. And guess what? They bring people in large numbers to church. I find those priests who are bold proclaimers, not of an opinion, but of the Catholic faith, as the most effective priests. So now I'm going to tell you the priests who annoy me. The priests who are just so influenced by the world. They have to kind of try to be popular. Yeah, I think Harrison Butker talked about it. The priest who has to get like Christmas photos with their dog in matching sweaters. It's just kind of silly. Hey, if you want to do it, that's fine. But oftentimes people do that stuff to be recognized and to be known. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to criticize me and say, oh, you just want to be popular. That's why you're doing this, that, and the other too. Sorry, no, I don't care to be popular, because I'm actually way more introverted than you can imagine, or are willing to listen to my experience. I am incredibly more introverted, but I can function at a high level, and people think I'm an extrovert. But nope, I get my energy from being quiet and being left alone, and I much prefer just being alone by myself, and if there's to be company, had small groups, not large groups. I can do these things, but it's just not my style. So the priests that I don't like are those who just seek popularity. It does nothing good for you. There are also priests who are delusional. They honestly think they're good at something, and they're not. But no one was bold enough to tell them the truth. When I was a formator in seminary, and I was in charge of pastoral formation, and so it was my job to help young men become priests. There were a handful of them who revolted against me because I was blunt, honest with them. There are some priests who are delusional because they don't have anyone telling them the truth. I've heard it. People be like, that was a great homily, Father. No, it wasn't. It was rife with politics, and it was long, it was boring, and the priest didn't make much sense at all. Don't tell your priest that it was a good homily if it wasn't a good homily. Tell them the truth, because too often priests are put on a pedestal, and they need to get knocked down to the level of Jesus kneeling on the floor and washing his disciples' feet. Please. And I see this time and again in seminary, where seminarians are so coddled, they're not challenged with the truth, and they grow up being incredibly delusional. I can't stand delusional priests because they think that they are good at something, or that they're so right about an opinion, and they've never actually heard criticism. And if they did, they reject it outright. Now, I don't want to be delusional, which is why I actually read your comments. And some of them I pay attention to, some of them I don't. I remember my spiritual director, who's now a bishop, he told me, Leo, believe no compliments and half of the criticisms. So when people compliment me, thank you, I appreciate it, I don't care. I mean, I'm grateful for the encouragement. I really am grateful for the encouragement, but I don't have to believe it. When they say, you were great, part of me says, I did a fine job. Thank you very much. I tried my best, but I wasn't great. I know that I could have done better. That's why my spiritual director said, accept no compliments, basically. Don't internalize it, because then you start believing it all. And he said, accept half of your criticisms. So to my brother priests who might be delusional, and I'm not naming any names, get to your spiritual director and talk to a good friend who's not afraid to critique you. Okay. Other priests who I don't like, competitive priests. Priests who just like to compete. They just, my parish raised this much money. Well, I raised more. Who cares? Hey, we got this many people at our mass. Well, we got more. Who cares? Come on, stop being so competitive, because it creates jealousies. And those people are constantly comparing themselves to others, and not in a healthy way. And it drives me nuts. The final priests who kind of drive me crazy are the lazy priests, who don't do much. They're there to maintain, which is an important part of ministry. You got to maintain the balance. But in so doing, they don't like it when a parishioner wants to do something kind of exciting for the parish. Oh, no. It's just going to be too much work. Father, come on, do some work. Come on, don't be afraid to do work. I remember Cardinal Dolan, when he was the rector at the North American College, he gave a very rousing conference, and he says, priests aren't dying from burnout. They're dying from bed sores. And it's true. There is so much work to be done. And we're saying pray for, workers in the vineyard. But so many of them, not all, but there's a good number who just don't do much. So lazy priests. And basically what I said, the kind of priests that I don't like are the ones who fall into the sin or live according to the deadly sins, whether it be laziness, sloth, whether it be pride, whether it be jealousy, which spawns competition, and the priests who just start believing lies about themselves, and they seek glory and attention. By the way, these are the same kind of people that Jesus didn't like either, so I'm in good company. Now, having said that, priests that I like and priests that I don't like, what kind of priest do I need to be? The kind of priest that's willing to try and get along with the others. There's a priest who doesn't like me, thinks that I'm a big self-promoter. This priest thinks he's got a great social media presence, and honestly, it's not. But that's fine, because he can do whatever he wants. And if he's doing it for the glory of God and the parish, great. But if he's doing it for his self-glory, that's another story. So anyway, this guy doesn't like me very well. But that doesn't mean that I dismiss him altogether. No. When I have to reach out, I always try to make a phone call. I try to be pleasant in my emails, and I always try to have conversations in person so that we can at least try to get rid of any stuff from the past and try to work together as true collaborators in the vineyard. Alas, that hasn't happened yet. That doesn't mean that I hate him, because I don't. There's no reason for me. I don't necessarily like them, but I'll be honest, I just can't stand that kind of attitude. But what kind of priest do I want to be? I want to be the priest who's at least trying to get along, and not get along and compromise my own values, because in my communications with this priest, I'm blunt honest, very, very honest, because that priest needs to hear the truth. But in reality, if I am going to be a good priest, I have to be a peacemaker. So here's how I'm going to end. I'm going to tell you how I pray every day, all right? This is the spirituality of Voluntas Dei. We're supposed to pray 5 kinds of disciplines. This is the spirituality called 3 5s. 3 sets of things that have 5 components in it. 3 5s. The first set of 5s are prayer disciplines. So the first prayer discipline is I've got to just pray. I've got to actually make time for pray. I've got to take time to meditate, which is different from prayer. Praying is like devotions and things like that. Talking. Meditation is quiet time. Then I've got to spend time with scripture. And then I'm supposed to have a devotion to Mary, which means, make sure that I'm learning about Mary and imitating her virtues and praying the rosary. And not seeing her as important, but essential to my faith. Like the way Christ is essential to my faith, the way Mary was essential to Christ, and vice versa. And then the 5th is to have devotion to the Eucharist. So those 5 things are my spiritual disciplinary practices. The second set of 5s are where I am trying to be a good priest. They're attitudes. The first is practicing the presence of God, living a life without complaint, trying to live without destructive criticism. Fourth is being a servant and being a peacemaker. That's the kind of priest that I want to be. Now, the third set of 5s is, in the beginning of the day, it's my job to kind of think ahead and say, when are 5 moments, boom, 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 when I can actually be those attitudes? When can I practice the presence of God? Like if I'm in traffic or a TSA is driving me crazy, I'll be kind of at peace. You know, I can be critical. So when someone really annoys me, I can be critical of them. Maybe I need to compliment them instead. That's the second practice. Third is, you know, if I'm going to complain about something, maybe I'm just going to have to take a deep breath and try to say something nice rather than something complaining. Being a servant, that's why I'm on a food truck. That's why I'm in a restaurant. That's why I am traveling around the world, giving talks and cooking demonstrations, leading pilgrimages. That's me trying to be a servant. And then the fifth, being a peacemaker. So again, with that priest that I don't necessarily get along with, can I at least, at the very least, be a peacemaker and say, hey, can we reach out and talk and try to communicate in a better way? So these are the things about my priesthood that I just wanted to reflect with you. I hope that this was helpful to you. And I hope that you please pray for me on this anniversary day. I've got, by the way, if you're in the Maryland area, I do have some opportunities for us to celebrate together. For example, on June the 9th, I'm going to be at St. Bartholomew's Church in Manchester, Maryland. I'll be celebrating the 10 o'clock morning mass, and my food truck will also be there, so come on down or come on out. And then on August the 11th, I know that's a little farther away, I'm going to actually be at a church where I really grew in a deep understanding of my vocation. That was at St. John's Catholic Church in Westminster, Maryland. It's the Sunday 6 o'clock p.m. Mass. I will be there offering a Mass of Thanksgiving and hopefully connecting with a lot of parishioners who I might remember me when I spent several years there as an associate pastor, so I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, please say a prayer for me. I hope that this was at least a fun show where I kind of reflect. You got a chance to see me in my pictures when I was really young, so thank you for paying attention to all of that. But please make sure you also like, subscribe, share, and comment. Tell me the kind of priest that you like, and tell me the kind of priest you want me to be. I do read many of those comments, and remember, I will not accept any compliments as like the truth, but I appreciate your encouragement. Again, I appreciate your encouragement, and I will even listen to the critique, but only accept half of them because, you know, you might not know the full story, or I might not know it, but you know the truth is somewhere in the middle. And also consider supporting us on our Patreon, where we can continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary. God bless you, and stay hungry for God.